Alright, Trans Am broke down. Cruise for Cancer 2022. The fill plug on the differential left the chat at some point and it was pouring today, so I looked under the car a couple times and it was always wet. But you can't tell the difference between the gear oil and water, but it is bone dry in there and it locked up hard, so there's carnage in that housing. Hopefully the housing's okay. Is there? Maybe. There she goes. So the car's in neutral right now and it's skidding right up. Shoo! The sad sight.
At least get all the stops?
Get a lot of them. Well, that's not good. If you saw from the thumbnail, the Firebird is down, and it's down hard right now. The rear end is locked up absolutely solid. I'll start out by saying that the day while I was driving this, it was raining really, really hard. And I looked under the car a couple of times, throughout the morning to make sure that it wasn't like leaking, etc. Everything's looking good, because it had dripped a little bit of differential fluid over time. I thought it was coming through a couple of the main cap studs that are on the TA cover on this car. I forget what the cover is, LPW cover. Regardless, I was looking. The car drove fine all day. It didn't make a sound. I had COVID last November and my sense of smell is still not what it was. It's like 70% maybe. Even today, I barely get a whiff of differential fluid. So it's something that, might have been obvious to someone, but I couldn't smell it if it was making an odor. Didn't make a noise until we were going down the freeway, going about 60 miles an hour, just cruising, not beating on it. I did one burnout the entire day and it was like 5 hours before then. Then all of a sudden it felt like the brakes were put on the car. I popped it in neutral. It was like a boat anchor was behind it and it pretty much just stopped on the middle of the highway. I was luckily enough, I had enough presence of mind to pull over as quick as I could because it was slowing down hard. And the last maybe 10, 15 feet or so, it was locking up and skipping, and it was really violent how it exited. No video of it, but what I found that happened is that at some point throughout the day or days prior, last time I drove it, who knows, is that on that cover, the fill plug is no longer installed. It's an Allen-headed plug and it's way up there, and you have to get basically under the car beneath the differential to see it on this cover. And at a first glance, you wouldn't know if it was there or not, but when I got parked, you could see steam coming out of the fill hole, which cued me in right away that, okay, the fill plug is gone. Under the car, now that it's not dripping water, it is kind of a murder show of differential fluid. It's all over the exhaust, the trunk, everything. At the time, the entire car was covered in water, so it looked like the rest of the car. I couldn't tell the difference, and you know what? Anybody else watching, you wouldn't have known the difference either. Maybe you would have smelled it, but unfortunately that wasn't the case for me, and it still isn't, even today. It doesn't smell like anything under here. So, anyways, I'm gonna get this thing up in the air. This thing broke through, for no reason other than the differential drained itself as I was driving it, and I was completely unaware of it until it seized up, which it sounds surprising, but it might sound surprising, but honestly, if it would have made a peep or, felt funny or made any noise outside of what is normal on an aftermarket rear end, they are inherently noisier than a factory one, especially when it has aftermarket control arms, etc. It sounded fine. I would have told you I'd drive it anywhere up until the second it seized up. So I found it very surprising. Usually when something's going, it starts making more and more noise. It wasn't until the last, few thousand feet of driving at that, it just, like a light switch, it was over. So that was surprising. In all reality, it could have gone a lot worse. I hope it didn't tear up the housing or, suspension mounting points, because it hopped pretty hard once it locked up. I mean, it was like you jammed a bar between the ring and pinion is what it felt like. So I don't really know what's damaged. It doesn't seem like the case is cracked, but until I probably pull it and give it a really good once over, I'm not gonna know for sure. But fingers crossed that I just lost the ring or pinion, or well, likely both. But it's gonna need a rebuild. I'm gonna fix this. It's a strange 12 volt. It's not a 10 volt as would be in this vehicle from the factory. And hopefully the axles are good and straight and everything. I'll have to really take this thing apart, and the best way to do it's going to be out of the car. So what I'm going to do is get it up in the air real quick and droop the axle, start taking it apart and see what we got.
Should we take a little nap? Yeah, we can strap it up.
Alright, so I got in there, the wheels off, and we're doing a preliminary cleaning. Wipe down the whole trunk pan and the exhaust and panhard bar a little bit, but so you can see best. See, all this yesterday, all this moisture here is all gear oil, right? But the entire car was absolutely soaked. So it looked like water, honestly. I mean, everything front to back was soaked. So looking under here, it didn't look any different than, you know, I was just driving in the rain. And with this thing all the way up, the fill plug is all the way hidden up there. So even now, it's kind of hard to see, but if you look at it, try and get better light, look at, you'll see threads. Now, I'd imagine there's a little fluid left in the bottom of it, but I'm gonna probably just go ahead and pull the rear end and then examine it on some jack stands. There's no sense in opening it up here, it's just gonna make a mess. So I suppose the next thing for me is to get working on dropping the rear end. It's not that bad of a job. It's just something you'd rather not do. So I'm gonna get cranking on that, and then we'll be able to inspect our housing and see if we cracked anything anywhere or what the deal is. But look, even here, oh no, that's just a little hair. I thought I saw a hairline crack, but I was picking up pubes on the road, so that's cool. Anyways, I'm gonna get to working on this, and we'll see what we got when it's on its way out. That's nice. That's like the training films. Check this out. This isn't normal.
What's up?
Hey. Hi.
Is there anything that, well, I need to catch it or anything?
Well, nothing should come out with it, but it's not going to be...
I'm just worried about the cover.
I'll grab it. I got
Okay.
gloves on. I'm really curious to see what broke in it other than the lost a bearing on the snout, you know?
No, you didn't.
Oh, that's a bearing. Oh, look at that.
You also see that?
Oh, yeah. You know, that's the first time I've ever actually hard broke something and needed a tow. It was the same day. I've never needed a tow before even. I was like, oh, mint, what a cool day. So a little bit of bearing material in there. The case for it, I lost a bearing bad. I was going to get the clips out, but my cross bolt, I think, is still there. I'll have to work on this to be able to get to it. It's on the other side right now. Oh yeah, there's bearings. Little roller bearings in there. Oh, that's my pinion bearing.
Oh no!
That's what it is. That's why it's so floppy.
Could get some light in there real quick.
Yep. So we lost the pinion bearing on it. That's why the snout is so floppy. Yeah, 100% that's what happened. Got hot, came apart, went into the housing, locked it up. Alright, so putting a little bit more thought into it, I'm actually going to bring the rear end back to my buddy Rick, who originally put the gear set in it, but right now I'm kind of a one-man show in the garage. So I rigged this up. I'm going to put it on a cart here so I can actually get it out into the truck a little bit easier, so to say, than trying to carry this thing. Little magic. A lot of guys are probably tough enough to horse that in, but my lower back goes out pretty easy and I'm not taking chances. It's been just about a week since I dropped the rear end off at Rick's house, and he got it all dialed in, so I'm headed back to pick it up today. And yeah, I'm really excited to be able to drive the car some more and get that rear end all broken and whatnot before the snow starts flying here in northern Wisconsin. So I've got about an hour drive, and yeah, I guess we'll see you when we get the rear end picked up and be back at the house, I think.
Anyway, I gotta make it all serious all the time. My 8-year-old daughter can ride a dirt bike better than anybody her age. Yep, time coming off. Here we go.
Alright guys, so I made it back home with the new rear end. It's all rebuilt, and what I gotta do now is get it onto my cart and get it into the garage and back on the garage floor. So this is kind of a sad sight. I never expected the rear end to fail like this, but it's through a combination of unfortunate things that happened. I did take the drive shaft here to Driveline Specialists in Duluth, Minnesota. They spun it, they changed how it was balanced a little bit, but it checked out perfect. U-joints are all in good shape and it's perfectly balanced, so it's not bent. The other thing I did is I got a new LPW cover for the rear end, and this is just to simply replace the one that's on there because it has a tapered fill plug. The fill plug is gone and the threads are all smashed up. So this seemed like a pretty good solution to what I had going on versus trying to fix up the old one. You can't really just chase this because it is a tapered thread. So that's pretty much all I got. I'm gonna get to getting that rear end out of there and back into the garage. I'll get it on my jack stands, and at that point I will fill it, and we'll be pretty close to stabbing it back into the car. But it's nice to be putting this back together so I can still break it in this fall and put some more miles on it. Alright guys, I got the rear end down onto the jack stands, and yeah, he did a nice job. It's all rebuilt. The gear pattern engagement looks real good. So he said he took maybe something like 7-8 hours to fully set up this thing, clean it and whatnot. I'm gonna get this all installed. It is a 390 gear. It has a dura-grip limited slip differential, and it's a 33 spline axle and carrier on each side. So anyways, it's fully rebuilt. New axle bearings and seals, everything's new on the inside, new carrier and everything was all mashed up. Check out the pinion bearing. I actually took this as a souvenir. This is pretty amazing. Here, check this out. You ever seen a pinion bearing look like that? Totally melted down. It's really kind of amazing, actually. Believe it or not, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, the rear end seemed just fine until it locked up on the highway. So, you know, you'd think if bearings are going out, they'll make some more noise, it'll start really being noticeable as it fails, etc. But I guess in my case, I was the lucky one that got pretty much no warning. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this filled up with fluid. It takes 80/90 non-synthetic GL5 compatible fluid, as well as a limited slip friction modifier. I'll do that while it's here. It'll be a lot easier to fill before I put the cover on, and hopefully tomorrow I'm gonna be driving this thing. So, all right guys, so I do have the LPW cover on this, which has a fill plug, which is much higher than what would be on the factory 10 bolt. And people pretty much seem to agree that about 2 quarts is right. So that much in here with the limited slip additive should give me, you know, maybe just over 2 quarts, and I think that's gonna be fine. You do not want to fill it up this high because overfilling it is a real problem. So this is all done, everything's torqued down in here. It is ready for fluid. So the reason I'm putting 80/90 in here is because the dura-grip explicitly asks for that fluid weight. And I'm gonna take their recommendation. I looked online a little bit to see what other folks used, and I think before people might have said use 85/140. It's a much heavier weight. Also specifically says non-synthetic lubrication. So this is pretty much what they recommend. You might have a different opinion on what to run, but I'm going off of the manufacturer's recommendations because they're smarter than me. I figure somebody's gonna want to see this. So right there, that is what I'm putting in there. So that's pretty much it. I've got 1 more quart to put in, as well as the limited slip additive. I could only get 1 type at my local parts store, and frankly I didn't want to wait and order something different. They only had 1 flavor of it, so I'm going to use what they had, and it should be alright. It's something I don't think too terribly much about. But anyways, this is pretty much it. I'm going to top this off, get my last cord in here, spin it around a little bit, get everything all coated nice, and yeah, I'm really close to putting the cover on. I'm going to torque down the caps and stuff as spec'd in the LPW instruction sheet, and after that I'm going to get ready to stab this thing back in the car after I get the drive shaft back in, and can start working on it. So pretty close to having this rear end back in the car and hopefully driving in no time. Okay, so allegedly that's 25 pound-feet. I'll put a mark on each one when I'm done. I'm gonna try off my 1/4 inch one that's in inch pounds. That felt really, really tight. Alright, well, on second thought, mine doesn't go this high, my inch pound wrench. But man, this is really tight. Calls for 25 pound-feet on 5/16 applications. So that's what I'm doing. You do this before you actually put on the studs. I'm going to set these down until they touch the caps with my Allen head, with my Allen-headed driver, and I'll have to grab my Allen-headed socket type bits and use my torque wrench on these as well. Alright, so I got a little bit of black RTV on the threads here as well. And I'm just going to bring these down in hopes that it goes into the holes as it would be, I guess you could say. And these get torqued to 10 pound-feet or 120 inch-pounds, so it's not that much. There, and I am set to 120. Same with the caps, so you're not putting much preload on those. Alright, these jam down. Alright, so that should be it. I'm going to clean up a little bit. I'm going to put white thread sealer on these two just so they're sealed and actually locked, you know, into place. And we're going to call this done. It's ready for installation. Alright, I got the drive shaft back in. We're off the jack stands. And that means that we are on our way in the home stretch. So let's see how well balanced I can be here. A little bit precarious, but should be good to go here. Just gonna take my time. We're on our journey back to its home. Okay, so that's about where I'm going to start working with it. More. I'm going to try and get it on the shocks first, is going to be my first goal. Just so I got sort of a secure area to work, I guess you could say. We are dangerously close. Okay. So once it's here, then you can give yourself a little leverage and really work on it. So until that point, I'm not real comfortable getting under it. So this thing is very heavy. Let's see how this goes. There, not too much drama. So far it's all going to plan. Ooh, I think I did a little oversight here. I need to get my springs in first. Alright, I pulled a fast one on you. I actually ended up just grinding this out and getting it totally done. Since it locked up, I found that the exhaust tips are actually misaligned a little bit. And this clamp down here appears to have slid. You can see where it's really dark. It looks like it's actually where it used to sit. So maybe I'll monkey with that a little bit before I go for a ride, but if you take a peek under here, we are all back together 100%. So I'm pretty psyched about this. I got it together maybe in 3-4 hours, something like that, of time worked on it. So I'm pretty happy with progress and how quick it all went. All things considered, this is something that I should have never had to do, but hey, what do you do? Sometimes this stuff happens. So here's what it looks like for all you guys that are curious when it's all done. I do have the factory sway bar with just some polyurethane bushings. I think they're Profane. The car does have UMI, tubular lower control arms, a panhard bar, torque arm with the relocation kit. It's kind of got the whole sauce back here. The one thing I do want to do is replace the iBox Sportline springs and these Bilstein shocks with probably the Strano setup. It seems to be the go-to. My buddy Rick, who rebuilt the rear end, has them on his car, says they're awesome. And I've heard nothing but bad things about these Sportlines, and that's been my experience too. Anyways, I'm going to finish this up, try and straighten out this exhaust real quick. Looks like if I loosen this clamp, maybe I can force it back real quick, get that all straightened out again, and looking okay. Then I'll go for a quick drive following the instructions to break in the new ring and pinion. So I'm outputting the first 10-15 miles on this rear end setup, and on the highway this is about how much noise it makes. This is pretty much identical to what the last setup was, so this is going to be normal for an aftermarket rear end, you know, non-factory type 10 bolt, right? The 10 bolts will be quieter, but any aftermarket rear end housing with aftermarket gears and everything seems to make more noise, and that's something they put right in the installation instructions for a lot of them. So I had to go put on a few more miles. I've checked it a couple of times. Everything seems pretty normal. Nothing's hitting anything any better, worse, or different than before. So I'm gonna go drive for a while tonight, enjoy one of these last decent nights we've got in the fall up here, and we'll kind of wrap up today's video back at the garage. Alright guys, well so far everything's seeming pretty good on this thing. I mean, no real complaints. Doesn't seem like anything's leaking at all, so this is definitely a good sign. I did notice a little bit of an intermittent rattle when I was driving it, and what was actually going on is for some reason this center cap is actually loose in there, so I don't know if I didn't quite mount the wheel centered, but it's lug centric and they're all torqued, so I don't quite know what happened there. I'll have to check it out when I get home, but that's not normal. So whatever the case, everything seems to be running pretty good. The car's looking strong right now, and yeah, I guess running really well. So I gotta check my odometer, but you're only supposed to put like 10 or 15 miles on this thing before you let the rear end cool off. It lets the ring and pinion mate and gets all the imperfections out of it and everything like that. I believe after that point you're actually supposed to change the fluid, and then you continue to your 500 mile interval. So kind of interesting. Never actually broken one of these in yet. Last time I bought the rear end from Rick, it was used, and he'd already broken it in and driven it and whatnot. So enough about that. I just wanted to give it a quick once over before I start heading back towards Wisconsin. And yeah, seems to be running really good. So I'm glad nothing else seems to be damaged.